So, as I explained in the previous video, number 2, in order to do fully justice to lens idea, what I've planned to do is make this video over and again in a number of different lengths, covering the topic in various levels of detail to determine, if possible, which is really the best length of video to make for YouTube. Because I've made a lot of videos, but up until now I've never really analysed it and studied what the best length is. So this is going to be, let's call this a medium length video. Right, so as I explained in the first video, and this is key, well, not the first video, the first of this plan, the second video. Oh, it's a good job it's the medium length one and not the quick one, otherwise I'd not get all these explanations in. Right, in the second video, I explained that I didn't follow, in the very first video that I made, the exact prescribed method laid out by Len, because there's a bug in Bryce that prevents it from obeying camera space. So although in theory his method would be the most efficient and easy to use, in practice, due to a bug, I can't follow it. I can't even follow it in a loose way because it's just not obeying camera space. So I have come up with a workaround that allows us to do it precisely and takes the spirit of his idea and doesn't include too many steps. So that's what I'm going to cover in this video. The other thing I should cover is why you want to use this anamorphic effect. But that's where I have a conceptual difficulty. You see, much like lens flare and bloom, the anamorphic effect, the blurring and stretching of the blur in the I think it's called bokeh, this blurred circle that you get, is a result of imperfections in a system which was designed to capture more of a field of view onto a smaller square of film and then use another lens to stretch it back again. And this creates these distortions between the lens and the film. Essentially, everything that's outside the lens gets distorted back into shape, or it should do. So it's actually sort of degrading your image to make it better, which to me seems a bit balmy, because we've got render engines to make images perfect. But I suppose if you're trying to simulate photographic effects, then it's a very good thing. I'm not deriding the idea, I'm just struggling to understand it from my own perspective. So it's very hard for me to sell you an idea of doing something if I can't see the benefit myself. I mean, I like the effect. It is just an effect, and you know, is it adding anything? I think essentially you have to draw your own conclusions. If you try it and you like the results, then that's good, because it's really a matter of personal taste. I mean, for example, there's very few situations where I like lens flare effects in renders. I mean, it's used extensively in video games, and bloom is as well. And well, it puts you behind the camera. If you're in an immersive video game, for example, then your eyes don't produce those sort of imperfections. Your eyes produce different imperfections. Those are imperfections due to using a camera. But we have got sort of used to this effect, so I suppose that's the reason that you'd want to use it in an artistic way. I suppose, as a slight digression, since I'm allowing myself this to be the medium length one, I'll see if I can track down an example of where I think lens flare is used very well, and then we'll get on with looking at this effect. So hang on a second, this is sort of a tangential but related topic. So this is an image by Rashad Carter, where I believe that the lens flare is actually adding something to the image. So this is an effect. I don't know whether it's a post effect, probably, I can't remember, or it's built into Bryce. It doesn't really matter. It's an effect that's simulating an effect within a camera lens within a render that didn't really, you know, have that effect in it to start with. It's an addition that Rash has chosen to add, and I think there's this really brilliant image that demonstrates this. Because without that, then it would appear a bit flat. It also demonstrates this leaf transparency effect, which is very nice. But anyway, so we're going to add a lens effect to this, and the process, well, it's fairly straightforward. So this is my scene I've set up, and I've set the depth of field already, and it's going to work with depth of field. So it's not going to work if you don't use depth of field. And what I have to do is go into the side view so I can see the camera and select my camera, and I'm going to edit it and copy the matrix, which copies the attributes of the camera. And as much as possible, when I create a standard Bryce cube now, and go edit and paste matrix, those attributes that have come from the camera now apply to the cube, so rotation and scale. Now you don't have the option of resizing the camera, but we do have the option of resizing this cube. So if I select all objects in my scene now other than this cube, and in their attributes link them to the cube, I can use this as a control, because the cube being their parent means that it can propagate these to its children, them, when I make modifications to it. So if I select this cube now, which bearing in mind will be visible in the render, so I need to hide it so it doesn't block the camera from the scene, I can use the 3D transformation tools in object space. So select object, so that's the object. So that object, because it's occupying camera space now, means that I can make an adjustment in camera space using this cube. So I use my 3D transformations to compress the y-axis 50%. There we go. Switch back to my camera view. Now because of that compression, you can see that some of the background's appearing. We don't want that, so to compensate for that I need to modify the document setup to 2:1 to compensate for the vertical compression, and that, once this is rendered out, will give me a version of this effect which has a minimal amount of distortion, except for the distortion which will appear on the depth of field, because the depth of field effect will still be a spherical blurred area. What we've done is we've compressed the scene, which means that when we adjust the scene by squeezing the sides in, the spherical blur will get turned into an elongated vertical oval blur, which is what we're aiming for with this effect. And the idea of that is a vertical bokeh, Len tells me, is the popular method for photographers because it leads your eyes into the scene, which seems like a reasonable theory, though I would then argue that horizontal bokeh could do the same thing, but that's apparently the less popular version, so we will focus on the popular version here. So you can see by doubling the size of the image, it will take twice as long to render for the same vertical resolution. Though the advantage of this is that it means that we'll have a higher level of sampling for our depth of field effect. So if I use, in my paint package, if I use an option to resize that, well I'll have that available when it's rendered, that uses a sampling, then I'll get another level of sampling in my depth of field effect, which will improve the quality of depth of field and reduce this level of visible grain that you often see due to the sampling. So at this point what I'll do is I'll pause the video and then I'll bring this in and resize it, and then you can see the final results, and then in that case I won't have gone on too long and this can be the medium length video. Right, I'm just going to pause this now. So here then is the result of that render in my paint package, and I got image and resize, and I've got smart size, which involves some sampling, but I've got other options here. I could try, I don't know which is better really, bicubic maybe, and then I'm resizing it to its original document size, so that brings it back in. So with the additional sampling it should be a bit smoother on the depth of field, and if I go and I'll just bring in my original image so you can compare the results, you can feel the that it's got some sort of like pulling in along the bottom here, and you can see the difference in the depth of field. So that is the desired result, and the method that I think so far, I mean I may have found a better method yet, that is easiest to perform. So there are other considerations which we'll come to, like how you can deal with HDRI backdrops, but I'll leave that for a later video. Okay then, cheers now.